We must think about how to stop this tragedy. Russia has never refused peace talks with Ukraine. It is not Russia but Ukraine that has publicly announced it's withdrawing from the negotiation process. Moreover, a decree was signed prohibiting such negotiations with Russia.
Well, listening to what Putin had to say there was our former Moscow correspondent, Nick Holdsworth. He's with me on the line now. Nick, what did you make of what Putin had to say there?
This is grandstanding on the part of Putin. He's taking the opportunity at a time when the Ukrainian offensive this year has ground to a halt, and despite the heavy losses the Russians are taking in Ukraine, the Kremlin perceives the Russian position as being one of strength at the moment. He's taken the opportunity to say, look, we've never refused peace talks. It's the Ukrainians who won't engage in peace talks. Of course, he's blaming the Ukrainians for the war in the first place. It's because they started attacking Russians in the eastern part of Ukraine, in the Donetsk, in 2014, he said, and he reiterated that Russia is ready for peace talks. Among the other things he talked about were the tragedy of the events in Gaza, economic problems in the world being the fault of faulty decisions by major players. He wants to restart the World Trade Organization. In other words, he's taking this opportunity at a time that he perceives the West is a bit on the back foot because Ukraine's on the back foot, to grandstand his idea of the multipolar world. Look, we're reasonable. We can have peace talks. It's a tragedy. War is always a tragedy. So let's talk. It's piling pressure on Ukraine and those wavering Western backers that the Russians think might weaken at this point.
And Nick, Putin saying there, as you mentioned, that he has never refused to participate in any kind of peace talks with the Ukrainian government. Does that suggest to you he might actually be willing now to engage in talks?
The Russians claim that they've always been willing to engage in talks. If the Ukrainians agree to engage in talks, the Russians would, of course, meet them. The problem is that Kiev perceives the Russian idea of peace talks as a Trojan horse for a reset, for them being able to re-equip and refresh their troops, strengthen their defences. They've already got very strong defences, 3 lines of defences in the eastern part of Ukraine and bordering Crimea. The Ukrainians will not go for this. The problem for the Ukrainians is that some in the West may try to put them under pressure to start talking about peace talks.
Nick Holdsworth, thanks very much indeed.